Hi, everyone. Hello and welcome to today's event. I'm Priya Joshi. I'm a Senior Research Officer for the Global Education Monitoring Report, housed and published at UNESCO. I'm so excited to moderate this event and really to be with this illustrious panel of speakers working on these issues of climate action and education at global, national, local, and school levels. You see that the title we gave this session today was Education as a Catalyst for People and Planet. We're all here today because we believe in the power of education, not just in terms of climate, but also in transforming our relationship with the climate, right, and our collective well-being. So we've been discussing these issues since even before the beginning of Agenda 2030. And we've developed two new products to share. A paper on a compilation of 80 country policies on climate change education, which was released on December 1st. And there's a forthcoming paper on the interlinkages between climate and education. These were both developed in partnership with the Monitoring Climate Change Communication and Education Project. So that is the business we're in the data and statistics sort of business. What we have in the forthcoming paper, what you will see is that we broadly highlighted the evidence on the connections between education and climate, knowledge, behaviors, actions, and policy approaches. I think we've heard about this all day today. We've made some broad recommendations on, first, financing. We need financing in general, but also not just in education for education's sake, but because education matters for climate and sustainability goals. We need like a pedagogical shift. But we don't. It's not enough just to sort of do the practice, but we need to document it. We need to do the research on it, and also we need to focus on the professional capacities across the SDGs to have this transformation. And hopefully, these issues that we've outlined here frame the conversation that we're about to have today. With this introductory setting of the stage, I first hand you over to Stefania Giannini, UNESCO's ADG for Education, for opening remarks to explain why education runs at the heart of the SDG agenda and how the Greening Education Partnership is creating a global movement for climate change. Over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Very happy and glad to be with you today. I'm just coming from the Greening Education Hub, which is at the very at the main entrance of the Green Zone, so I encourage to visit. It's a visible, tangible, model of how education must be the driver for sustainable development and change. And before going to that point, let me say that in our sessions there, I'm pretty sure it was almost the same narrative you are developing on this side of the Site Expo and the COP28. We see education clearly as a victim of climate change, and we see education as a part of the solution. I would say the most important part of the solution, because we cannot be serious about tackling climate change effectively. We cannot be serious about climate action and climate justice without changing mindset, without starting working at individual level. Small, simple steps that every single day we can do to make the world more sustainable. So, having said that, what's going to happen in the world? As UNESCO, as you maybe know, we have the difficult task to coordinate the entire community within the roadmap of SDG 4. And that's why last year at the Transforming Education Summit, when the Secretary General of the UN called the entire education community, but most interestingly, the leaders of the world to commit to transform, an outcome of this process, listening to young people who are pushing so much and leading so much on that, was and still is what we call a Greening Education Partnership. That means greening schools, greening curriculum, greening teachers and teaching capacity, and greening communities. So it's an holistic approach to take. It's, I would say, the last chapter of a long-term novel which UNESCO started to provide the world with in 2003, 2004, when the very first ESD, Education for Sustainable Development roadmap, was launched. So now, what can we do? What must we do? The GEM report, our nice colleagues in Paris are working very much on data, as you know, monitoring the state of the art. And they are about launching a very recent report and paper on this specific matter. Just a few pickups from that. We see that more years of education can increase the students' knowledge, can increase students' awareness, and this is very much important not only for them as learners, but it's most important for them as citizens in the future. But we know that the paper presents evidence very interesting, so I encourage you to read you carefully when you will be released. By the way, in my notes, I was supposed to say which will be launched today, and then they told me no, but very soon. It's a commitment you take in front of the entire community. So they say, and it's true, that the traditional modes of education don't work at all, colleagues. Education systems are still very much silos structure. They are still very much, valorizing specific competencies and specific ways of teaching. If I'm a teacher of maths or a teacher of history, why should I, invest my time and the training process, if any, available to embed the climate change education and sustainable development education where I'm accountable for my own, file, my own competence-based and knowledge-based teaching. So there is a huge transformation to happen. There is a big, I would say, radical change to make. And to that end, we know that there is a long way to go, but I wish to bring you a message of hope, let me say, and concrete examples of how things may happen at country level concretely. In the previous section, I was invited to take the floor. There were 10 ministers from different regions of the world, and all of them, to summarize in a nutshell, told us the following. We are not prepared at system level, so we need the support of international organizations and our collective efforts to make this silos approach be broken and to move a true whole society, all school, all community approach. However, we are very much already engaged in some concrete initiatives. Let me mention one I have in mind, just heard there. Morocco, which very keen to lead in this region, by the way, which is running since a few years a project that they call, I hope I'm quoting rightly, it's a question maybe I'll change it, but it's one student, one school, one tree, one forest. That means the schools are requested to implement visibly, having lessons outside, planting trees, what education for climate change and sustainable development means. I can move to Romania, another region of the world where the head of state last year at COP27 convened the very first roundtable of heads of state. UNESCO was invited. I had the honor to represent the organization there and say, listen, guys, we have to, from the top of the government, invest our political capital to transform education systems through funds, new, fresh money, and to make the dialogue, and this is my last point, between different ministers and different components of the government very much a permanent structural dialogue. Education for climate change, and I conclude, and sustainable development is not simply an education matter. Let's say, let's be very, very, it's beautiful to see here, I see, I would say, dear usual suspects, not only in this room, but a Rewired, which is a fantastic moment to gather the community together. And some of us were coming from Tanzania, where the GPE governing board was discussing a little bit on the same topics. And then UNESCO General Conference 1 month ago. However, colleagues, if you want to be serious and if you want to really to get the goal, which is the goal, every learner climate ready by 2030, we have to open windows and doors of these buildings. And we have to bring the message, education is part of the solution, to other sectors, especially environment. This is a couple, and I conclude really, I see this is a very alarming, yeah? Okay, but I still have 30 seconds. So, I mean, this is a couple which is going to leave a legacy, right? We just heard, and I wish to congratulate with the blue zone, that the last damage found actually has been established. Then there is discussion, who is leading, the money, and it's okay. But that's a very good news. The Greening Education Hub, still inviting you to visit it, is a joint effort of UNESCO, the Greening Education Partnership, joined by now 82 countries and more than 1,000 organizations, which is a visible way to go ahead with the next COPs. However, we also know that when it comes to finance, and when it comes to new models and new fresh money for education for climate change, you know, which is the data, I'm pretty sure that somebody already mentioned here, out of the big climate fund, 0.03% is the percentage which somehow is connected to education. So this cannot be enough, of course. And this is not a good sign of political awareness, leadership, and commitment. So my last point is we have some tools. We have, you know, and thanks to the GEM report for making visible good practices at country level as well as global challenges. We have UNESCO, UNICEF, UNF, CCC very much leading this global new greening education partnership, but without a real investment of funds, you know, new vision, and also the courage as ministers of education to break some silos and to change at country level, will not be able to get every learner climate ready by 2030. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Deji. Just for, it's an honor to have you here and an inspiring sort of, you know, intervention, really. And I feel like for all those of us who've been thinking about this for about a decade, it is quite interesting to see the movement. I feel like this Rewired Summit, the Greening Education Partnership, are represent new, something new, and you know, an evolution, hopefully. I turn over now, because you also mentioned the youth. I am delighted to welcome our next speaker, Kehkashan Basu. She's a very inspiring youth leader on climate education and founder of Green Hope Foundation. Kehkashan, to just the premise is that young people are definitely recognized as leaders of climate education and action. They're not just victims, they're initiators, contributors. But at the same time, I feel like we also hear that youth leadership is often paid lip service. You know, they are present in the media and in conversations, but may not always be in policy and decision-making spaces. So could you tell us a little bit about how your work through the Green Hope Foundation leads on holding governments accountable for their climate commitments, please?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that question, and I'm delighted to share this space with all of you. So, you know, we all know that education gives us the knowledge and the power to act, and that's really our mantra at Green Hope Foundation. We use education for sustainable development as a transformative tool to provide the knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and behaviors to think and act for a sustainable future across 28 countries and working with over 500,000 people. And for the last 11 years, the work that we've been doing on the ground has really shown us that there's kind of two ways to address education. One, of course, is working to change the curriculum, making sure that children have access to this really important ESD and climate education. But on the other hand, we work with communities that don't have that very basic access to education. So how can you green the curriculum if you don't have the infrastructure to facilitate education and facilitate access to education in the first place? And so we kind of address both of these areas. We try to build the infrastructure, and then we try to impart the education. So for instance, our solar-powered mobile library takes books to the doorstep of thousands of out-of-school children across countries in Asia and Africa that have been afflicted by climate change and these disasters. Our solar-powered Academy of Hope for women and girls in rural Bangladesh, a community that's suffering currently still from climate change, provides climate resilience education to girls in the mornings and functions as a sewing school for women in the evenings that provides them with entrepreneurship skills. We have 2 computer labs that are currently functional, one in rural Liberia that's suffering from both climate change as well as the impacts of the civil war. So working with at-risk youth to make sure that they have the IT skills that enables them to build local circular bioeconomies. And our STEM computer lab in rural Western India provides girls who are children of migrant women workers with STEM education, intersecting with environment so that they're able to come up with these innovative solutions on their own for climate justice. And when we implement that infrastructure and make sure they have access to education, we reach out to areas and communities that do have the infrastructure but might not have the curriculum. So we partner with school boards and schools and universities around the world to provide that very important education, from the Toronto District School Board in Canada, educating children about protecting their local biodiversity, or working in Suriname on the outskirts of Paramaribo with children to make sure that they are able to see the fruits of their labor through growing their own food, for instance. And I share these examples really because as a non-state actor, this is the impact that we've been able to have. So just imagine, with the political will and the right policies in place, how that action and solutions, how that could be upscaled, and with the finance as well, how it could actually create positive impact on a much, much larger scale. So the way we hold governments to account is through our work by proving that it is possible to bring about positive change. If we as non-state actors with very limited funding can do it, you can definitely, as governments, make sure that you have the policies in place to mandate education for sustainable development, as well as the infrastructure to facilitate education for sustainable development all around the world. And for that, it requires multi-stakeholder partnerships. Like governments cannot do it on their own. Non-state actors like us cannot do it on our own without the climate finance that is just really, really important to facilitate that action. Private sector needs to be involved. Academia needs to be involved. And we all really need to just come together and make sure that we're able to move forward towards this climate just future. But at the end of the day, our work is what holds the governments accountable.
Well, thank you so much. That was so specific, and really, non-state actors, of course, are vital in that multi-stakeholder partnership of education for all issues, but definitely for climate change as well. And I think NGOs have played a vital role in sort of increasing climate awareness around the world. Today, our next speaker is Kathleen Rogers, who's the president of Earth Day, and unfortunately was not able to be here. But Earth Day is the largest civic event on Earth, which began 50 years ago. So Kathleen will speak to us about her engagements with the private sector and how they're sort of improving their capacities to make the green transition. I think she had COVID.
All for having me, and congratulations to everyone in attendance, and of course to UNESCO for the amazing work that they're doing on climate literacy. I think the question is a great one. EarthDay.org has been involved in first environmental education and now climate education for the past 53 years, since the first Earth Day in 1970. Education is central to what we do. We've come to understand, particularly over the last 7 years, that climate literacy and the failure of governments, of business, of local communities, of really adopting climate education and becoming educated about climate change has really been the Achilles heel of the entire environmental movement. So we're deeply gratified that the world is now moving to embrace climate education as a central component of solving the climate crisis. And so why are we talking to business? In every revolution, from the Industrial Revolution to the computer revolution, even to the space revolution, business has been behind changes to education. They've financed it. They've worked with governments to make sure it was incorporated. They depend on climate literate people now for jobs, and jobs now and jobs in the future. So working with business, working with governments is the central way that EarthDay.org is hoping to accomplish our goals. In addition, we have 65 million teachers through Education International and 235 million union members through ITUC calling for immediate climate education, not just in trade schools, not just in K through 12 schools, professional schools everywhere, because they know that 90% of innovation comes from inside companies. The unions want to be trained and ready for jobs now and in the future. And governments need educated consumers, educated voters, and educated workers if we're all going to find a way to solve the climate crisis. So working with UNESCO, working with many other institutions that are represented here today, I believe we're taking a giant step forward for all of us to solve the climate crisis. Thanks for the question. I don't think we can do this without business. In fact, I have great faith that business is going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. They're all hoping to advance their own new technologies, to find new ways of doing better business, better for consumers, better for shareholders, better for themselves, better for the planet. So we started a project about a year ago and have been very grateful to Microsoft, to particularly UPS, Laura Lane, their senior vice president, for helping us advance the idea that business needs not just to say that they need climate education, but to actually work with governments, work inside their own companies to make sure that climate education is at the top of the agenda. As I said before, innovation comes from inside companies. Innovation comes from inside governments. And we're hoping our students, our professional class, our trade union members, all of us will be educated about this issue, not just because we need to know the science, but because we intend to be the innovators, the inventors, and the entrepreneurs of this future. We have an opportunity to remake everything, but we can't do it without climate education. So we're very grateful to companies that are joining with us and will join in the future to make this a central part of their business planning and of their commitment to climate change.
Wow, thank you, Kathleen. And as we heard from UNESCO, the larger sort of global organization working on this issue. We heard from nonprofits. We heard of nonprofits working with the private sector as well. And now we're going to shift the attention to issues of how and what we are learning. And for that, I feel like a lot of us heard in the keynotes and everywhere that it's not just about learning and being cognitively aware about climate change, but actually, improving our socio-emotional skills, and also to be sort of able to, take action on climate. Right? So our next speaker is Koen Timmers, Director of Take Action Global, which is an institution that has created a truly global network of teachers, students, and advocacy partners working at the intersection of climate education and action. And Koen, I have a two-part question for you. How does Take Action Global ensure that students and teachers are engaging outside the school, so with communities and other institutions? And a bit more of a researchy question, because of the scale of the work you're doing, how are you sort of thinking about documenting how all of your interventions are leading to change in behavior and actions?
Okay, thank you so much.
You.
Thank you for having me. So Take Action Global's mission is to make students more knowledgeable about climate change, but also to offer them green skills, including empathy, creativity, collaboration, etc. And I'm stressing this point because it's both of them. Many governments are watching at knowledge being the only. They are really concerned about the PISA tests from OECD. They want to have good literature and good math. My own Minister of Education in Belgium claimed that we need to stop doing climate education. We need to focus on math and literature. So it's not only knowledge, it's also skills. And it's not only skills as well. But what we truly want through climate education is changing behavior and changing society's mindset as well. And for that, research has been proving and stating that we need the right balance between the three H's, hands, heart, and hands, heart,
Hands,
and
heart,
head.
and
I'm
head.
so sorry. Thank you so much. Let me give you two examples, please. Students planting trees without knowing anything about climate change. That's not going to work. Students who are really knowledgeable about climate change, but there's no emotion involved, not going to work either. There's a very recent research about that part. So that brings me to what we've been doing. We have been creating networks, as they call it, communities of practice, COPs, and those are having a lot of teachers. And they're sharing knowledge, basically. They're sharing their concern as well. It's not all beauty. They're sharing what they have been creating, and they're bringing each other to the next level. That is an alternative way of professional development, basically. At the same time, on a different layer, the students have been connecting as well, and they've been learning from students in other continents even, that the causes for climate change can be the same, but the effects may be very different. And learning that in the first hand is very, very powerful. That brings engagement and emotions as well. We have been bringing students and their parents to the classroom, and even with grandparents, they had interviews how climate change may have changed throughout the past decades. We had them going on a street and interviewing people from communities as well. Why am I sharing this? Some people really doubt about the effect of climate change education, whether it's sufficient and whether the impact is now. Well, there has been research by Lawson that students have a big impact on their parents at home. They have the power to change the lifestyle of their parents at home, and with them, society's mindset as well. So is there a big impact of climate change education? Yes. I prefer calling it climate action education because that action component needs to be part of it. The hands, remember? So we have been working with several organizations as well, with Lego, because they give the teachers even like a larger platform. We are not trying to sell bricks, we are co-creating and we are making sure that students are able to share their solutions as well. So what we see throughout this global network is engagement, knowledge, but also students taking action. And those three bring the three H's in balance, basically. Your second question, well, we see that different actors require a different kind of impact. Governments are really interested in how we are trying to bring it into curriculum. Media is really interested in anecdotes. The non-profits are really interested in the size of the network, and so on and so on. But when you speak with climate scientists, they speak the language of carbon and emissions. And so we created an app which is keeping track of all of the efforts taken by the students. And we worked on an algorithm with Deloitte Foundation, basically, to make it legit and solid. And it is showing the impact as in the amounts of reduced, removed, and avoided amounts of carbon. And so together with all of the actions taken by the teachers and the students in a platform, we have a lot of data, basically. And now we would like to go to the next stage. We need to find people and funding for that so that we can really prove the impact of that. That's still a step to be taken, basically. Yeah.
That is incredible work, and I feel like the next stage of this will be very exciting. Thank you so much. And so all of our speakers up to now have spoken about education's potential, their work within ed policy, and I feel like, the ADG did mention it in the beginning. What is it, 0.003 in finance? And I feel like, we all have to admit it that, especially if most of us are from the education community, despite our understanding, despite our awareness, it has really not made a dent. Education has been a bit neglected in that climate policy, climate finance conversation. Although, many of the people here are in the blue zone, having lots of conversations, so maybe this is a turning point as well. But I feel like the finance crisis here, I'm not sure what the time is, or what is it? So I feel like it's a two-part issue. It's an issue that we have documented in partnership with the UIS and with the World Bank, that there is a real challenge of education financing for education in general. And this is, households are burdened, aid is stagnating. And so this is a real problem, I would say, also for the climate community, because there's strong evidence that education really matters for climate knowledge, action, etc. And secondly, what we have also seen is that the programs and interventions that are in climate change education are often not adequately budgeted for. So this is a two-part issue for us. And our final speaker today is Melanie Sany, who is the International Youth and Workforce Development Team Lead for the Education Development Center, which has a long-standing record championing innovations and multi-sectoral approaches. So Melanie, my question to you is on the finance. There's the recently released State of Climate Action Report 2023, published by the Bezos Fund and the World Resources Institute, states that the total global climate finance flows reached 1.1 trillion in 2021 and 1.4 trillion in 2022. So trillion with a T. So how is the EDC and the education community engaging with other stakeholders to sort of, have a different, storyline, narrative maybe on education financing, so that it becomes part of these discussions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, the question of financing.
Yeah.
I think, from our perspective, it's really a question of making the case as well.
Yeah.
We have different perspectives we all know that the human capital is what drives economies, national economies, as well as the climate change.
Yeah.
And so we have heard so far a lot about the importance of education. On our hand, it's also making the case with both private and public financing about why it is important for the climate community to invest as well in education. So there are different perspectives that has been shared, and particularly over the last week about and I'm sorry for that. I really don't know what happened at the beginning of the session. I think maybe because I didn't have time to eat, and suddenly I had a very dry throat. But so there are different, from our perspective, so there are different ways to make the case in particular, and from everything we have heard also this week. First, there is an economic perspective as well. We are hearing, and we all know, and it was also spoken today again, that businesses will need today, but will also need tomorrow, the right skills and the skilled workforce to be able to drive that change. But when we speak about the private sector, it's not only one large company that needs a certain number of skilled workers today to make this transition. It's an entire range of economic system actors, small, medium, and large companies that needs to drive the transition into green economies. And for that, we need a wide range of skilled workforce, but we also need a human capital that can adapt quickly today, but can adapt also to the world of work in the future. And nobody knows today what more than 60% of the job will be in 5 years or in 10 years. It's the same in climate change. Let's not kid ourselves. We don't know what will be the job in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years that will really drive that transition to green economies. And for that, we need to prepare not only the youth that are graduating each year and enter the labor market each year in our respective countries, we also need to prepare the children that are in our education systems to be able to adapt, transform, and innovate, and ensure that at all levels of our education system, we develop those innovation skills, those I can do it, we can make the change, and how do we adapt quickly to our changing economies? And how does it translate at all levels of our education system? So it's a little bit more of the economic argument here that we are making, and really also realizing that if we really want to be very country specific, because every single of our countries and regions within our own countries are very different, are facing very different challenges in terms of this transition to green economies, but also needs to make it happen at scale and fast. And the only way to do it, it's not one skilling program to meet one specific demand. This is the education system. At the same time, we are often seen within the education systems as being too slow to change, and it's also our role and responsibilities to actually demonstrate what is scalable, but what is scalable fast within our education system. And that can happen at the level of primary school, secondary school, technical and vocational education, universities. And we have to demonstrate what has proven to be able to scale fast, and that even sometimes are not related to climate change itself, but we can bring some of those lessons learned to directly demonstrate how we are bringing the attitudes and skills, being the transferable skills, as well as the technical skills in the green economies that are needed. And I think we have a lot of very strong examples for rapid scale-up across the education system. So that's a little bit more of the argument we are taking, at least within the Youth and Workforce Development setup within Education Development Center, but also developing the narrative to make sure that both at primary and secondary school level as well, that we have a positive narrative to demonstrate how we are bringing this new not workforce at that age, of course, but the driver of change and the decision makers, the adaptive mindset and innovative, and we can really develop those skills within our children and youth at every level of the education system. Without that, the transition to a green economy will not happen. There might be some very band-aid solution that will be done in 1 year, 2 years from now, and at small scale, but to drive sustainable, a sustainable course in the green economies in each of our countries, this is only the education system that can have the right answer. So that's making the case. Now, all that being said, we need to also demonstrate that moving from, there is still the need for coordination, and I think we started speaking about it, being it civil society, private sector, the national government, and the international community. And the coordination needs to happen not only at the national level, but also at the sub-national levels, ensuring that there are very actionable roadmaps, action plans that really align where a specific country is growing economically, and how the education sector at the level of the regions has also a very set up roadmap with key milestones in terms of transforming the education system to embed some of those green skills, again, transferable and hard skill. And I insist on this transferable, which are the most important for a very rapid changing economic environment. So that's some of the narrative. EDC is tracking it in 2 ways. One, really bringing those international actors and champions together from those different actors in 2 different types of international coalition around mobilizing more financing into the education system. And I'm sure I'm already beyond my 4 minutes. Okay, so I will be cool.
Yeah, and I don't see the timer anymore.
Okay,
so I
so
feel
we
like
don't
I'm not
know.
sure
I'm
what's
neither,
happening.
so it's very hard. But basically, I mean, there are different initiatives that are happening to really see.
It's not the right screen. I don't know if you see the screen. Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah. No, please, go ahead.
So the Global Education Forum, we are bringing together different bilateral and multilaterals, especially for the international financing towards education. Innovative financing mechanism that can really support this transition at all levels of the education system into the green economy as well. Another one which is more, could actually seem, I would not say strange, but almost, is also through, so there is, a school meals coalition, and under this, we are also, leading the Sustainable Finance Initiative that is really looking at how to increase more school meals around the world, but also doing it in a climate smart way. And what it means. There is a huge, I mean, maybe 25%, 30% of the world population are children who are going to school every day and have hopefully, or we are aiming to increase the access to a nutritious, good meal through the school feeding program. How do we do it from a climate smart way? From the way we cook and how we can use renewable energies and not the wood to make that cooking, but also what are the type of locally led solutions for farming to table, farming to school tables, and ensuring actually we can also drive climate smart farming solution as well in this.
No.
I will stop here,
Yeah.
but some different perspective we wanted to share as
Yeah.
well in terms of making the case.
No, thank you so much. I feel like there's so much to share really on this topic, and I'm sure we could have a lot of conversation on this. And I feel like I had wanted us to have more of an interactive conversation, but as has been the situation today, really running out of time. But we did hear about financing at the end, and I sort of wanted everyone sort of to think about, and maybe our panels to sort of maybe give a 1-minute answer on this question. If financing was not the issue, what do you think it would take the world to prioritize education in climate agendas at the global, national, and local levels? So maybe we start with you. Yeah. If financing was not the issue, yeah. 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 No? Is it working? Yeah. Is it working? Yeah. No? Yeah.
So, if it's one word, I would say, given the magnitude of the impact of climate change on education, given the magnitude of the work we have to do to make education part of the solution, it's a word which starts with P. It's only strong partnership which can bring together all stakeholders, and as you say at GEM report, all means all at UNESCO. So governments, the civil society, the private sector, which must not drive, in our vision, the process, but must be part of the solution and share what I say is a collective moral responsibility.
Just to take I feel like there's one thing what I wanted to add myself on this is, having been in economics, in demography, in comparative education, I feel like one of the real needs is a disciplinary sort of flexibility. So, because we need people who can work across all of these issues, who can actually speak the language across these issues, and who can actually be understanding of the variety of perspectives. But over to you, Koen, if you want some last words on the...
I want to add to that the teacher's voice, basically. It's not something new on their plate. We can really integrate this. It's really important. It will come with economical benefits as well. So it's not just another thing to be added.
For me, it's it's turning the national policies into actionable concrete action plans within 5 years, and ensuring that thousands and thousands of schools within 5 to 10 years maximum really have the climate education fully embedded within their curricula and their after-school programs to ensure the right transition.
Thank you so much for the panel, but I'll take 1 minute just because I really did want it to be interactive. Does anyone want to, anyone raise their hand and just say the one word you think it would take to, make education a priority? Anyone from the audience want to say? What do you think it would take?
Students' voices.
Sorry, go ahead. Where are we? Students' voices, yes?
It's not a word, but centering the children.
Centering the children.
One word, action.
Action. Teacher training. Equality. Youth leadership. Collectivism.
I think social justice also fits in somewhere.
Social justice. Education 4.0. All right. 4.7.
We're not reinventing the wheel.
Yes. I'm sure we could go on forever on this topic. I mean, I feel political leadership, right? I mean, the list goes on, really. But, sorry? Common sense. Amazing, amazing.
Data.
Data. Yes, amazing. Again, I feel, let's just hope that this does mean something new, in this world of, a lot of us are in the business of talking about these issues. We look at like global patterns or, national patterns or local patterns. I feel like it's just refreshing to hear things are actually changing on the ground, and we also feel like a bit of a change. So let's just work with that momentum and take this on. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Can I just mention something here?
Sure.
So, if there are educators over here, we have Mr. Koen here, who started the Climate Action Project. And the Climate Action Project, which started with just a few schools across the globe, now now connects more than 1 million classrooms for this Design Thinking 6 Weeks project.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is the change that we want to see, and this is
Yeah.
the change that's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
The governments around the world, the Ministry of Education has to take this into their plate, that the climate action curriculum has to be mandatory in the schools. Without that, we can only be talking and we can just have these projects that are working on ground. But if you really want a change, then that ESG we talk about and the curriculum, climate action curriculum that needs to be embedded in the school,
Yeah.
in the school systems.
Yeah. No, I must say that's very important. And also, we have a policy brochure on climate change education profiles of 80 countries, which is like most of humanity. And you do find that policy-wise, countries are saying that they're doing it, but it's really about the implementation tracking. There's a lot that we have to dig, to like really understand this. But amazing initiatives, really.
To
Yes.
join the climate
Yes.
action